Okay. Thank you, Edwin. So, as I mentioned, this is just really a brief overview of what the tool is going to do. We really want you to take the time to look at it. And so, this is the starter screen. It really just tells you what the tool does. It analyzes climate, community, materials, policy, and financial information. So, the way that it works is that you will pick a city. For this demo, we've already selected the city is Milwaukee. And then you'll configure your project. So, you'll get a series of questions, and then what we'll do is generate design scenarios for you. So you can keep going to the next. And so this is what that looks like. Right now we have it to where you have two buildings to choose. For this demo, we're going to look at the precedent, and then the Columbia Savings and Loan Old Bank Building is one of the potential pilot sites. But in the future, we would like for you to be able to put an address in, and with our GIS integrations, it'll be able to pull up data for you. So the option today is reuse or rebuild, but we also want to know if you can retrofit the building, evaluate a potential acquisition, or it just explore development opportunities based on climate data and other data that we have. So right now you'll choose some priorities that you care about, but all of these things are integrated into the scenarios that are provided. It just is weighted differently based on what you choose. And then, Edwin, if you have anything on the technical side that you want to add, please just step in.
Oh,
Okay. So yeah, so once you choose your priorities and put the site information in, it'll take you to this map. Right now, we have integrated data that shows you heat vulnerability indexes and then flooding information, but we also have local material suppliers. So when we give you the scenarios, it'll also pinpoint exactly who in your local area are able to actually execute that and whether or not they're certified. So that's a longer trajectory of a story that we want to add to this where we have partners, but right now that's just the idea of it. You'll get an idea, a story of the building's history, and then also documented history from permit records. And then you can go to the next. And then I see a question.
yes, sorry to interrupt.
No.
Um, you mentioned the map is able to see like heat indexes and flood data. How do
Mhm.
you source that?
Okay, that is a slide at the end, but all of our sources are available, and especially the ones that are open data so that you know, and we will include the limitations to those sources as we do our analysis. But a lot of the government agencies have this type of information. Some of the local cities, like the Eco Office or other departments in the city, will have this type of information from their own research that they do. So what we'll do is basically data scrape and add that information here and use our methods to interpret it.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, once you get the owner story, then it'll give you basically an analysis. So this is a part of the analysis, but essentially for this particular one, it'll show you how strong of an opportunity it is to adapt, meaning how easy it is, how much additional funding you'll have to spend on or time you'll have to spend getting permit changes or something like that. And you can see based on the six inputs that are very broad categories, what we're actually analyzing and what those scores are. And then you can also go and click to learn more about those. But on the other side, you'll see the site risk summary. So we were working through whether or not we should just allow you to choose what your site risks are, but we think it'll be more informative because some sites, I mean, you might just choose flooding because you know it's flooding, but you could also have severe heating and you might want to think about that energy system that you include in your building design. So we do that from our own data scraping and provide that information. You can go to the next. And then with that, it'll spit out three different scenarios. So this is an overview page. It'll show you based on your priorities, this is the best case scenario that you might want to choose. But these are some other options that you'll think about the trade-offs. So we'll have our strategic focus, which here we're thinking about what would a mixed use neighborhood anchor look like, because that's what this building is. And then the best use case for that. And then it'll also give you the cost level. So we're still working on all of these things, and this is something that we would like feedback on, how do we actually display this type of information to be the most useful? But then we'll also talk about the main trade-offs. So if you want to be as aligned to the community board's presentations, then this is going to cost additional funds because you have to think about the operational expenses with hiring other organizations or whatever to basically maintain those things. So it's stuff like that that we want to include in here. Okay, you can go to the next. All right, so these are examples of what that scenario is going to look like. So it's going to spit out a main image of the building and it's going to pinpoint exact places like the roof mechanical system or the basement mechanical system or the windows or something like that that you can start to think about how to maximize your strategies. And then as you continue to move on to the next screens, it'll go when you go to the next screen. Yeah, it'll go more into specific strategies for heat mitigation, or you could just keep going. Or winter durability, thinking about what those connections and joints look like. Or severe wind and storm, all of the things that you might need to consider for this particular site. The idea is to give you close enough architectural detailed drawings that they're useful, but we don't want to create any liability. So that's why the architect would have to verify. So we'll have a next step or a verification sheet so you can understand what permits are necessary or who can help you actually get these drawings or what vendors can execute this type of detail. So as we the question came up, you know, what about the sources and the transparency? That is something, especially with AI, this has AI integrated into it. But like I said, for the demo, we did a lot of research to test our methods. But we also want to put as much information as possible to specific resources so that you can also just go ahead and do your own research, but we just made it easier for you to think about these different categories. Okay. So I'll stop there. That was one of the sites. If you guys want to go ahead and test the Columbia Bank building, I see another question.
Yes. I don't know if this was mentioned, but is there like a section or consideration for like various like ways of generating energy for the building, like solar, or
Yes.
is that considered?
Yeah. So once we get through the interactive demo, I can, if some of the questions allow, I can show some of the previous work that just didn't make it into this demo. But a lot of my previous work has been around using parametric design to actually do the building analysis. So if architects know about the LCA analysis, where you look at all of the thermal or sun lighting or orientation and how that impacts like, you know, solar heat gain and stuff like that. So we do have that type of scientific information embedded into the system. It'll just be done at a later date because the first thing we need to do is make sure that we can get the right type of data, no matter where the location is, to do a basic analysis. So that's our first priority.
Cool, thank
Okay.
you.
Yep. All right, so I'll go ahead and give maybe like 5 to 10 minutes for you to test the tool. And it would be cool if you guys come across something that you like or think is interesting or have questions and just kind of shout it out and we can start the conversation.
So just click start assessment here.
Yes,
All right.
I'm gonna go on mute for a sec. I see a hand.
Yes. Sorry if these questions are too big for right now, but like, is this a product that you'll be like selling, or does that come with consultation from you? How does that look?
So right now, this is the type of work that I do in my consulting practice through method development, but the goal is to create a platform that I can just have subscribers and partners. And so the idea is to sell it, but before I start to really deploy a large amount of resources or time into getting the funding necessary to build this out, I need to validate whether or not it's useful, and if so, what parts, so that it can just be rolled out. So I can talk to you about the business case for it. I've presented that many, many times. This is just the first time that I've actually had users test it. So shout out to Edwin, because he is the one that made it possible for you all to actually use this.
Yeah, it seems great. I didn't have any feedback for the technical, sorry. But yeah, it seems great.
Good, 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 good. Okay, I see a few hands. Ross, I saw you first, and then Susie. You're muted.
Yeah, so looking at the platform, it's really neat. I might suggest a uh, a final step after you get kind of the report, which would be like some type of PDF summary. Because in my experience, often it's not necessarily, the indecision maker isn't always the person you're working with. Often it's somebody that they're working with up the chain. And so by giving them a PDF, it's something where it's like, hey, here's the case. And instead of depending on them just to do it from memory, it's like, okay, here's something that's a nice PDF, that you can sit over, you can review, you can have a meeting over. It also gives you a reason to contact their or to get their contact information if you haven't already. So I would recommend, maybe something like that. And then also with what you end up with, I think that's something where you might have building product manufacturers that are interested in getting involved, and they could probably take on the cost of, it could be like a Facebook model where you're trying to encourage as many users as possible, and they're taking on the cost by, okay, yeah, and if you want some specific resources, these guys are local, they meet this standard. Here are the specs. Here are, do you need a BIM object to be able to throw this into your design and see how it'll work? I mean, I think that those are all different tiers that you could, have the building product manufacturer side take on a lot of those costs.
Thank you for that. I love that. So in other iterations, there is an export option. So I think that that's good that you validated that. The
Mhm.
vendor and manufacturer idea, the goal was to partner with folks, but I think that you just provided another perspective on how that could actually look. So thank you. There is a slide that is in our appendix that shows a lot of the research that we've done, which is data scraping all of the vendors that do sustainable materials and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
we started to do that ourselves, but ideally, as we expand to other cities, that would be the model where we can get other, some support on that. But yeah,
Mhm.
good idea. Thank you. Susie, and then Arijit.
Yeah, I was wondering, I think it would be helpful if there was a category that had to do with like abatement issues.
Mm,
If there was asbestos in the building, there was a brownfield site around it, something that gave some history on what used to occupy that building.
yeah.
Because sometimes you're going to have these buildings and you don't know what they were in the history. And that kind of research will pull up lots of information. And it's usually somewhere, it's usually somewhere in the information system somewhere, but not always. And sometimes a kind of an historical survey of what occupied the space 100 years ago will tell
Mm,
you, oh, there was a gas station here, so you're going to have to do some remediation on the site. That's a key element that you need to know before moving forward.
okay. That is amazing that you said that, because it does validate some things as well, like Ross did. There is a portion right now in that, once you get your building profile, that has the history, and the idea is to pull the permit records and stuff like that. But to make it more sophisticated, like you said, we do need to figure out what those data points are,
Mhm.
so that they can be integrated more fully, so that
Mhm.
you get a full, complete story. But yeah, that's good that we'll focus.
What one element is I know somewhere in the state records there's somewhere a website that has buried oil tanks
Yeah.
that
Oh,
are located on lots, and it's somewhere in the data, and you can look that up, and that's something that, of course, you got to remove if it's there. And another question I had was, are you going to do this for vacant lots at all? Like
yeah.
inner city vacant lots? Okay. So
Yeah.
an instance for that would be what was there beforehand?
Mhm.
What's underneath the soil?
Yeah.
Because you're going to run into existing foundations, you're going to run into fill that was on site, things like that. So that would help evaluate some vacant lots.
Okay, that's cool, 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 cool. There is a survey that I'm gonna put in there in this. And I think that information is useful. Like when I showed you guys the walkthrough at first, the grayed out options, one of those is like infill and stuff like that. So that's gonna be another iteration down the pipeline, but all of your feedback is gonna be really useful, especially the website that you just mentioned. So let me just go ahead and do that so I don't forget, because I would love to capture thoughts. And then I saw more hands. So you can reach it.
Hi, it's actually Vaishali. I'm sitting with with Richard. Uh,
Hi.
Hi. But I was wondering, is the score supposed to guide people into whether this is a good, what is this building good for? So, for example, if you want to highlight community benefit, then the score is really high. But if you pick building performance, maybe it's an old building, the building performance is not so high, so the score drops. But we tried a bunch of different options and the score stayed the same. So I'm just wondering, what is the correlation of the score
Yeah.
ability versus the options?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and that is something that I will allow Tech Edwin to come off of mute on and discuss. But I'll just say the score is a really important part of our framework, but the demo has limited capabilities when it comes to some of the features that are shown. So
Okay.
the scoring system, to answer your question, ideally, if you pick a set of priorities, the scenario is going to spit out all of like it's going to integrate that stuff automatically, but it's just going to prioritize and weight those things differently. So let's say that you do have a building that's old and you need to think about those systems, but you are in a community that has historical and cultural significance. And so you also need to
Right.
consider that. The
Mhm.
scenarios will allow you to see what the best case option are if you prioritize each of those things, but it'll show you what the trade-off is. So if you prioritize the building envelope, then maybe the facade, maybe you get it historically registered and you can't use the facade in a
Yeah.
way that is as inviting as you could if you did the community, something like
Okay.
that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Edwin, did you want to say anything about the technicals? You have a few technical folks on the call, so maybe they can give some insight.
For the scoring system, I mean, basically what you said, where it's based on the six inputs. So all the scoring system just it combines all that together for that one percentage. So I wasn't let me put it up so I can see what I can see what I'm talking about. But the scoring system is based on the community value, the carbon value, and all that kind of stuff into one aspect.
Yeah, and I'll say that I kind of thought we would have a discussion on this and the history because of my previous work and knowing how important those things are. So it's good that you guys are validating a lot of these things because right now, the other precedent that we showed, the score for reuse was only 79, but it was reused, like it was adapted. So that just tells us we need to go back to the drawing board a little bit and figure out really either study that precedent a little bit more to see how they did it or adjust some of the weights and the way that they add up. So those are good points to allow us to focus on next. Any other things that are jumping out at folks?
Um, I think it would be, this is Jared, everyone. It would be interesting to have like an input where the users, like say for instance, you had where we were at the other day, let's say Metcalf Park, and let's say you had some long-term residents who happen to have like photographs or something of those sites, like having a capacity to be able to put like community source data in there, so that because I think someone mentioned it, but the state has they have a site that has basically aerial imagery that goes back to 1934. So it stops being his actual aerial imagery pre 1950 before satellites got up there. Um, but like having a ground level version of that where you could have and I don't know, this is a whole technical thing you all can deal with later, but once upon a time, I'm not sure what they did with it. Microsoft was working on a system where you could combine the imagery of multiple people from multiple uh, viewpoints and basically have a historical 3D kind of model version of that scene. There's a lot of photographs for it, so that might be something worth thinking about later.
That is interesting. So one of the things that method development does that's integrated into this, if we did a business presentation, I would show you I have 4 different tools that I'm developing. This is just one of them. The other one of the tools is called Insight Engine, and it's essentially the way that the information is interpreted. But a lot of these methods come from the field school. So Regent taught me this through oral archival research and oral history research, but translating those interviews or documents into something like a story that you can use to create the design scenarios and then merging that with other information like policies and just kind of using it as a math equation that way. So I think that it would be cool to start to think about what those building profiles look like to have more robust around each of the different topics that we're looking like at. So yeah, I'll consider what that could look like moving forward, but that's really cool. And then I'll also want to follow up with you about that specific resource that you mentioned. Okay. Anything else? Okay, I'm gonna pop the survey in here. Oh, Ross, I saw you.
Yeah, it might also be helpful to overlay. I don't know what all information could be useful, but for instance, if the building is in any type of historic district, you know, whether there's any restrictions that would come with that, or whether there's any, funding opportunities or historic tax credits or things like that. Just kind of to know right off the bat. I mean, I think that that the Thrive King building there, I think that has some designation. Um, and a lot of times, sometimes it's optional, sometimes it's not optional. That can even be a rabbit hole you go down. It could be a whole other area of consultation that you kind of work in as part of it. Just an idea.
No, it's a great idea too. And actually one of the previous iterations, so what you guys are seeing is iteration 7, I believe, of just my time with Edwin. So before that, it was a bunch of them. They just weren't interactive. But the historical property data that you mentioned, that is useful information, is actually included in this one. But you mentioned something else that is not yet included, and I think it would be really helpful. Can you just repeat that last part that you mentioned?
Oh, I mean, I was just talking about that there's different types of historic preservation districts. So I know that, and I know because I'm a big nerd and I've watched some historic preservation uh, meetings for this county of Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very interesting stuff. But it'll be like, oh, well, okay, it's on this side of the line, so technically the designation doesn't impact your ability as a private owner to do this and this. But if you did have low income housing, then you could apply for this and this.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other areas where it's like, okay, this is a little bit more locked down, and you're on Main Street, And so you're going to have to, if you want to be climate conscious and sustainable, you also are going to have to maintain the facade, wherever it may be. So
Yeah.
just kind of, just kind of highlighting those different, you know, uh, zones that you might be in that, or I don't know, maybe I'm not a county government person, but if you're in a different, district or tax
Mm-hmm.
district or, whatever it may be, I think, and then, with the abatement information as well. I mean, I think that
Yeah.
just layers of building intelligence,
Mm.
I think the more layers that you could add, the better, while juggling, not making it too complex.
Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, 2 weeks. I mean, this looks extremely professional. So amazing job.
Yeah. Good job, everyone.
Well,
Okay.
like Ross mentioned, in terms of those different sites with the different layers of historic districts, they all come with different monies that can come with them.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
if it's part, like I think you mentioned that if it's with the city of Milwaukee, you can get a grant for the bid MLK Boulevard, improvements to work on that. All those things that come up that might go with that particular district
Yeah. I think
at
that
all the
that's,
different levels. You got your state historic districts, your local, and then your national.
yeah,
All have different websites.
that's true. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to see if we have it in this actual. Okay, I'm gonna just show you guys one more thing. Oh, wait. Okay. Never mind. We took it out. Okay, but all of that information is really good. So that brings me to another thing. So this is one of the iterations that we had one iteration that included like financial information and material information and stuff like that on one sheet, but it was a little busy. So we
Mhm.
started to take it off and it'll be just kind of like clickable things that you just continue to get. But one of the things that we also would like information on or feedback is the user interface. So you guys have talked a lot about the data sources that could be useful, which is very, very helpful. You talked a lot about some of the workflows that would be necessary to actually be useful as a tool, like looking at the abatement, that's the first step. But in terms of the basically step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, outside of the report that we need to add in there, is there anything else in the workflow that just doesn't make sense or is just feels misaligned or is missing something?
I think you're off to a great start. I think, uh, and this could be just my tiredness talking, but maybe literally having some arrows that shows how the flow goes from each phase or
Yeah.
something like that. Like simple things like that can be very helpful.
Okay.
Um,
So some wayfinding.
mhm.
Okay. And I took that. Okay, that's good. That's good to know. Anything else?
So on the very first, the building profile, it is, you have like the street view, the satellite view, but it might be something where, and I know it might be difficult if you're using Google Maps, but something that just shows like the front of the building,
Mm-hmm.
like a facade, and that might
Yeah.
be like the default image. I don't know how Google does it. Google generally is pretty good about kind of showing you a preview of the front of the house. So I don't know if you could take that part of their API and put it in or something. But I
Yeah.
think it would be the final piece, and then also you're already there. You can always, like, maybe you can go through Google Maps, Google Street View, and I'm and you guys already have really good integration here, so it seems like something you guys could easily.
Yeah, it'd be nice to click this too. Okay, that's good feedback. And I believe one of the other iterations did have some other views. Edwin, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, let me interject. If you scroll up a little bit, you will see something on the top right, which is Google Earth. It will show you like the direct view of the building. So you can click on on Street View, get to see it.
Wait, did
But the actual perspective, I've been trying to implement that as well, but it's been kind of difficult. So I just had to like backtrack and use the basic aerial view.
okay. That's good. It's an option. It just needs to get worked through a little bit more. Okay, cool.
Another thing that you might want to consider to add in another layer, maybe on some smaller buildings for residential, would be utilities that are on site.
Hmm.
And that kind of tells you right there on some of the more of a residential infill projects, what utilities are there, where they are even would be really helpful.
Mhm.
That's getting into more of the like City of Milwaukee records
Yeah.
things.
Okay, that's good. I don't think I consider utilities, but when I was in New York, when I was first starting out in my tech kind of adventures, one of the people that I met was similar to you, Ross. He did like building scans using LiDAR and stuff like that. And he was getting contracts for infrastructure. So just the person that does the surveys and stuff like that. And he was asking me if I could take his information and translate it into 3D models from his PDFs using some type of tech. That's a whole nother story. But I do agree like infrastructure is extremely important and I don't think I considered that enough, but it would be really useful to know. So I'll also note that as well.
And but it could be also another payment tier where it's like, okay, by default, we have this imagery, but if you want to really embrace this platform for a fee that you can enhance your profile, submit us photos, whatever, or we'll get a local Matterport provider, you can partner with a Matterport provider. They could go out and do a virtual tour of it, or, there's just, some different options, kind of Zillow-ify it.
Yeah, I love the options of making more money and partner with folks. Okay, so before we get too far into the things, I am actually going to drop this survey in here. I think I mentioned it at least 5 times.
Hey, quick, Tiana, is there any merit in integrating the Milwaukee zoning GIS
Mhm.
system into this so that,
Yeah.
that's another layer of information that
Yes. So yes, and yes. So a lot of my work outside of the demo is that type of integration, looking at the zoning and land use, looking at the demographic data from census records, and then understanding the property assessments, and then using that to kind of create the 3D models and then analyze them, and then tack on like the climate analysis on top of that once you get that built. Let me just show you guys one more thing. Because it'll be really quick. It's on my website, I think, too. So I put the survey in the chat just so you guys know. Okay, so for those of you who haven't explored my website, you should do that, mechadevelopment.com. But this type of thing right here is just an example of some of the testing that I used to do before I really started to tap into coding. But essentially is using Grasshopper scripts to analyze a bunch of that type of the different data that you just mentioned, and then using it to tell me essentially what is the density or like massing that would be good for this site based on the priorities that I created. So it was the onset of the methodology, but it is something that I like to play around with. But I'm just trying to figure out at a larger scale, what does that look like? And so all of this feedback is really useful. I'm gonna take some notes and then analyze it a little bit more and figure out what the next step is. But
yeah, sorry, thanks.
yeah, no, thank you. I'm gonna give maybe
Um,
a couple minutes for you guys to fill out the survey. Thank
One
you.
more thing,
Yes.
and I guess this is kind of a piece of everybody's thing, but especially with the talk and concern about hyperscale data centers, it'd be very interesting if you could, going on that utilities mapping thing, there could be like in some form like a real time um, flow rates of resources to different things, or at least simulate it or something. Um, I know that I don't know if you can access that or not, but I know We Energies most of their power draw systems are all like automated where they can, basically just, inquiry what's drawing what, how much power. That might not be public or not, but you can probably have some form of that where you can say, all right, well, you want to do a housing project here, 200 units, but there's a hyperscale data center 2 miles down the road, you know, is it going to cost you a whole lot more money to put utilities in to be able
Mhm.
to produce enough power for your thing since everything's being sucked up by this thing? So, you know,
Yeah.
that could be cool too.
I think that's good. And you brought up another thing that I do want to just put out there as something that I've been thinking about in the back of my mind as I've been working with tech, especially something that's supposed to be for climate and sustainability. The level of contradiction that I feel sometimes in building this, mostly because I don't fully understand the implications of it. A lot of this is new, so it's not a lot of longitudinal studies of the impacts of this, but we just see the water supply, the pressure, the all of those things already starting to articulate in the built environment. But as I continue to build the company, is going to be really important, and that's why we do the look for sustainable material suppliers and try to partner with companies like Habitable, which is like the scientific backing behind, how do you actually know something is sustainable or not? So we are trying to be as transparent as possible and use these spaces as an opportunity to also acknowledge that anything you do with tech, even this Zoom call that we're on, is contributing to some type of environmental harm in some capacity, whether it's mining or something else. But I think the goal is really to understand that we live in a world where that is the case, but we need to think about how do we all develop in a way that creates a better trajectory for ourselves. So you just brought up a lot of important things for me to consider as I continue on. But that is something that it just kind of lingers. Okay. So I do want to say thank you all for joining the demo today, and thank you Wisco NOMA and everybody on the call for participating and giving so much feedback. Thank you so much, Edwin, for creating this whole opportunity by developing the demo. I'm going to take the notes and go on, but I'll just open it up. And I know Wisco NOMA, this is technically still your general body meeting. And yeah, I know you just wrapped up the Project Pipeline initiative. So that's all I really had for today. And you guys have the demo, you have my contact information. Actually, let me share my screen one more time so you can get this little link thing. And if there's anybody on the call who doesn't do like QR codes or links, I work in like finance a little bit with Doma as the treasurer, and our CFO just will not click a link. So if anybody is like that, just let me know and I'll send another form of my information to you. All right. Thank you so much. Stop sharing. Bye. Anybody from What's Going On More?
Thank you. Bye.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
you all. Bye now.
Bye.
Thanks, Tiana.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
See you, Tiana.
Thanks, Tiana.
Thank you. Thank you.